Zoom out from your life for a moment. Forget your notifications, your debt, the constant, low-frequency hum of the electrical grid that powers your existence. I want you to look at a specific point in the Bay of Bengal, precisely at coordinates 11.55 degrees north, 92.24 degrees east. On your high-definition screen, via Google Earth, North Sentinel Island looks like a minor rendering floor, a dense, emerald smudge surrounded by a ring of pale sand and treacherous, bone-white reefs. But look closer at the surf, at the thin line where the deep blue of the ocean meets the turquoise shallows. There is a physical boundary here, a literal line in the churning water where the 21st century simply ceases to exist. We live in an era of absolute transparency, where satellites can track your car in real time and algorithms can predict your next emotional state before you even feel it. Yet, here is a place where the entire digital age hits a wall of prehistoric silence. This is not just a geographical anomaly. It is a profound, stinging insult to our collective ego. We call it the Forbidden Island, but we rarely stop to ask who is doing the forbidding and why. To us, the ocean is a highway, a resource, or a map to be filled with data points. To the people on that beach, the ocean is a fence. It is the perimeter of a fortress that has held firm for longer than any empire, any religion, or any language in recorded history. I want you to think about the sheer audacity of this silence. In a world that demands every single inch of soil be taxed, surveyed, and converted into bits of information, the Sentinelese have maintained a total void. They have created a black hole in the global infrastructure of control. This isn't a matter of them being lost. They aren't lost. We know exactly where they are. The terrifying truth that we refuse to face is that they know exactly where we are too, and they have decided that we are not worth knowing. They have looked at the smoke from our passing tankers, the drones hovering in their skis, and the plastic waste washing up on their shores, and they have drawn a line in the sand with the tip of a hand-carved bow. This is the place where the global village ends and something much older, much more resilient, begins its watch. Why does this frustrate us so much? Why does the existence of one tiny island without Wi-Fi feel like a threat? Because our civilization is built on the premise of its own inevitability. We believe that everyone, given the choice, would want to be like us. We believe our progress is an irresistible force, and yet for thousands of years, this force has broken against the reefs of North Sentinel. They are the only people on Earth who have successfully maintained a no-fly zone against the entirety of modern civilization. They are not hiding, they are holding a border. They are exercising a form of sovereignty that requires no passports, no embassies, and no recognition from the United Nations. It is a sovereignty born of pure, unadulterated refusal. When you see that green blur on your map, understand that you are looking at the only place on the planet where the modern world's permission is not required to exist. I want you to think about a number. I want you to let it sit in the back of your mind until it feels heavy, until it starts to make your own life, your country, and your entire culture feel like a fleeting shadow. 60,000 years. I want you to say it out loud. 60,000 years. To a modern human, a decade is an era. A century is ancient history. A millennium is a myth. But the Sentinelese have been standing on that same patch of Earth for 60,000 years. I want you to imagine the scale of that continuity. When the first foundations of the pyramids were being laid in the desert sands of Egypt, the people on North Sentinel Island had already been there for 55,000 years. They were there when the mammoths still roamed the northern tundras. They were there when the Sahara was a lush forest. They were there when the first humans set foot in Europe. They have seen the world change in ways we can only reconstruct through carbon dating and geological core samples, and through it all, they remained. Once you truly understand the scale of 60,000 years, our modernity begins to look incredibly fragile, almost pathetic. We describe ourselves as the peak of evolution, the masters of the biosphere, yet we struggle to sustain a civilization for more than a few centuries without facing ecological collapse, total war, or social disintegration. We have built cities of glass and steel that will crumble in a few hundred years if left untended. They have built a culture that has lasted for 600 centuries without leaving a single scar on the earth. They have survived the rising of the oceans, the shifting of tectonic plates, and the extinction of countless species, all while maintaining a perfect, static equilibrium with their environment. They have seen the ice ages come and go. They have watched the stars shift their positions in the night sky. 60,000 years, this isn't just a statistic. It is a track record of success that dwarfs everything we have ever built. We call them primitive because they do not have the wheel, the steam engine, or the smartphone. We look at their lack of innovation as a failure of the imagination. but we are the ones whose systems are breaking down after only 300 years of industrialization. We are the ones currently debating whether our grandchildren will have a habitable planet. Who is the real master of the Earth? Is it the one who consumes the entire planet in a flash of 3 centuries, leaving behind a trail of toxic waste and broken systems? Or is it the one who lives within its limits for 60,000 years, leaving the forest as they found it? Every time we look at that island, we are looking at a mirror that reflects our own instability. We cannot forgive them for their longevity because it proves that our progress was never a necessity for human survival. It was a choice, a loud, violent, and perhaps suicidal choice. We use a very specific, very loaded vocabulary when we talk about the people of North Sentinel Island. We call them uncontacted. I want you to deconstruct that word for a moment. To call someone uncontacted implies that contact is the natural, inevitable state of being. It suggests that their current existence is a defect, a missing chapter, or an unfinished project that needs to be corrected by our presence. It frames them as a relic, frozen in time, waiting for us to press the play button and bring them into the light of the modern day. This is the ultimate expression of our civilizational pride. We simply cannot conceive of a reality where we are not the protagonists. We assume that because they don't have our technology, they must be waiting for it, as if they are sitting on that beach in a state of perpetual anticipation for the arrival of the first cargo ship. But what if uncontacted isn't a status at all? What if it's a deliberate, calculated, and highly successful choice? What if they aren't behind us on a timeline, but have simply walked off the timeline altogether? By labeling them uncontacted, we strip them of their agency and their history. We treat their isolation as a lack of opportunity rather than a sustained act of sovereign will. We act as if they are trapped in the Stone Age, ignoring the fact that they have fought bloodier, more consistent, and more successful wars to stay there than many nations have fought for their independence. When we see them standing on the beach, shaking their spears at passing helicopters or cargo ships, we choose to see savagery or blind rage. But I want you to see something else. I want you to see a nation that has issued a clear diplomatic no for millennia. It is the most consistent foreign policy in human history. Our refusal to recognize their sovereignty isn't based on their lack of culture or social structure. It is based on our inability to accept that someone could look at everything we offer, our medicine, our religion, our gadgets, our laws, and find it utterly worthless. We call them primitive to avoid calling them independent, because independence from the global system is the one thing our world cannot permit. The modern world is a predator that demands total integration. You are either a consumer, a producer, or a data point. The Sentinelese are none of these. They have rejected the social contract of the modern world. By calling them uncontacted, we maintain the illusion that they just haven't been invited yet. We refuse to admit that they have already seen the invitation, understood the costs, and burned the letter. Their isolation is not a lack of knowledge. It is the highest form of knowledge. It is the knowledge that contact with us is the end of them. The world likes to pretend that the hostility of the Sentinelese is a mindless, animalistic instinct. We tell ourselves they are aggressive because they are too wild or too uneducated to understand the benefits of our friendship. But history, the history we often choose to ignore, tells a much darker, more clinical story. In 1880, a British naval officer named Maurice Vidal Portman landed on the island. He wasn't an explorer in the romantic sense. He was a colonial administrator obsessed with classification. He didn't come to trade or to learn. He came to study them through the lens of Victorian anthropology, which viewed non-Europeans as biological specimens. His party kidnapped 6 people, an elderly couple and 4 children. They were taken to Port Blair, a colonial settlement that was a nightmare of disease, strange noises, and the suffocating structures of the British Empire. The results were as predictable as they were horrific. The elderly couple died almost immediately. Their immune systems, perfected over 60,000 years of isolation, were no match for the civilized germs we carry like a plague. The British, seeing their specimens dying, panicked. The 4 children, sick, traumatized, and having watched their elders perish in a strange, terrifying land, were eventually dumped back on the beach of North Sentinel. They were left with gifts of toys and cloth, small, pathetic compensations for the destruction of their world. I want you to imagine the cultural memory of that event. In a small, tight-knit society that has lived in total isolation for 60,000 years, an event like that isn't just a story. It is a foundational trauma. It is an apocalypse. They didn't see explorers. They saw demons who came from the sea, stole their elders to be murdered, and returned their children as carriers of death. When they shoot arrows at anyone who approaches today, they aren't being irrational. They are practicing a form of high-level border security based on a very accurate historical lesson. Contact with the outside world equals extinction. Every coconut we toss from a boat, every Bible a missionary tries to bring ashore, every drone we fly over their canopy is seen through the lens of their 1880 betrayal. Their hostility is actually a sophisticated defense mechanism, a cultural immune response. They remember what we did. They know that our gifts are often the wrapping paper for our diseases, our chains, and our erasures. They have decided that one lesson was enough for the next 60,000 years. They don't hate us out of ignorance. They resist us out of experience. They have identified the modern world as a predatory force, and they are the only people on the planet who are currently winning the war against it. They are protecting themselves from the virus that we call civilization. And frankly, looking at our history, can you blame them? Why are we so obsessed with them? Why does the modern world keep looming over this tiny island like a frustrated, narcissistic parent? For decades, the Indian government and various explorers have approached the island, throwing coconuts and pigs onto the sand like offerings to a stubborn god. We treat the island like a door that is accidentally locked, and we are convinced that if we just find the right key, the right gift, the right approach, the right message, it will swing open and they will welcome us into their world. This is the closed door metaphor that haunts the modern mind. Our civilization cannot stand a closed door. An unexplored cave, an unclimbed peak, an uncontacted tribe. These are all problems that must be solved by our intellect and our industry. We view their refusal as a puzzle to be solved, rather than a boundary to be respected. But the Sentinelese have shown us time and again that the door isn't stuck. They are holding it shut from the other side with everything they have. They have accepted our coconuts in the past, because a free resource is a free resource, but they have never, not once, invited the giver onto the sand. They take the gift and then they point their bows at the giver's heart. It is the most honest form of diplomacy on the planet. They are telling us, your things are acceptable, but you are not. This drives our civilization mad. We are like the missionary John Allen Chau, who believed his love and his religious message were so cosmically important that they overrode the sovereignty of an entire people. He didn't see a nation. He saw a lost people who needed his permission to be saved. He couldn't imagine that they were already saved from us. We call it outreach, we call it environmental protection, we call it anthropological study. But in reality, it is a refusal to recognize that a group of human beings has the right to exist entirely outside of our permission. We treat them as a protected species in a nature reserve, as if they are animals in a cage, because the alternative, recognizing them as a sovereign nation that simply wants nothing to do with us, is too damaging to our global ego. We cannot forgive them for not wanting to be us. Our pride tells us that our way of life is the only way of life. We are like a jilted lover who cannot accept a no, stalking the island with our cameras and our good intentions, waiting for a crack in the armor, but there is no crack. There is only a 60,000-year-old no that we are too arrogant to hear. We keep knocking on a door that was locked from the inside for a very good reason. Here is the final, uncomfortable truth that we try to bury under layers of academic study and news reports. We look at the Sentinelese and see a people who have failed to progress. We see their lack of electricity, their lack of writing, and their lack of heavy industry as a lack of achievement. But I want you to think about what success actually means for a biological species. If the goal of a civilization is long-term survival, who has actually won? We have built a world of incredible, dizzying complexity, but it is a world that is currently choking on its own waste, trembling under the threat of nuclear fire, and losing its collective mental health to the very screens we use to watch them. We are a high-tech society that cannot survive a week without a global supply chain. If the power goes out, we die. If the ships stop moving, we starve. If the servers crash, our entire identity vanishes into the ether. The Sentinelese, with the least amount of technology, have the longest record of human success in the history of our species. They have survived 60,000 years without a pharmacy, without a stock market, without a central government, and without a single line of code. They are the only people on Earth who are truly free from our taxes, free from our wars, free from our ideological shifts, and free from our digital surveillance. They are the only people who do not owe their lives to a machine they do not understand. They have achieved the ultimate human goal, a sustainable, autonomous existence that requires nothing from anyone else. When the final history of humanity is written, if there is anyone left to write it, the story won't be about how the advanced world saved the primitive world. It will be about how a tiny group of people on a small island in the Bay of Bengal were the only ones wise enough to say no to the madness of the modern world. They know something about the price of contact that we have spent centuries trying to forget. that once you let the modern world in, you can never, ever get it out. You cannot be partially modernized. Once you accept the first gift, you accept the entire system, the debt, the disease, the dependency, and the eventual erasure of your soul. As you finish listening to this, I want you to ask yourself, who is truly the museum exhibit? Is it the people who have lived in perfect harmony with their island for 60,000 years? Or is it us, trapped in a frantic 300-year-old experiment that is already beginning to fail? They aren't the ones who are lost. We are the ones drifting in the dark, desperate for a signal, while they stand on the shore, watching us fail and making sure we never land. They aren't the uncontacted. They are the unconquered. And that is why we can never forgive them. They are the living proof that everything we value is optional.